Perik Lamed Gimel, that's where we're holding. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu smites. He smites the various people. And yesterday we spoke about the what do you call it?
The golden calf.
The golden calf.
The
Okay.
different ways they died from it.
Right. And we spoke about the woman who was a sota. So take a look at Perik Lamed Gimel, Pasuk Zayin. Moshe Yikach, it's 502, page 502, right in the middle of the page, smack in the middle of the page, maybe a little past the middle. Last two words.
Moshe Yikach?
Yeah, Moshe Yikach. It says, Moshe Yikach es all. Moshe would take the tent, v'notalo michutz lamachane, harchik mina machane. He pitched the tent distant from the camp. V'karlo ohel moed. He called it the tent of meeting. Anybody who came to search for Hashem, anybody who was petitioning Hashem would go out to the Ol Moed, which was outside of the camp. Okay. When Moshe went out to the tent, people would stand up, they would stand by the entrance of their tents. They would look after Moshe as he went to the Ohel. So we learned from here a halacha that when a Rav walks into the room, there are different levels of how long you have to stand up for. If it's your average rabbi, so you have to stand up when he gets within 4 amos of you, and you stay standing till he walks out of your 4 amos, which isn't very long, it's not very far. As he becomes like a communal leader, you're supposed to stand up for him as soon as you see him and wait till he gets past you. If he's the leader of the Jewish people, you stand up as far as you could see him and as far as he goes. So here's Moshe Rabbeinu as the leader of the people. The people stood by the entrance of the tent because Moshe Rabbeinu was standing up to go out to the Ohel Moed. So the people stand up by the entrance of the tent. Now, there is a medrash. I'm just looking at Rashi for 1 second. Rashi here, it says the positive. V'hibitu acharei Moshe. It's the left column of Rashi. About 6 lines from the bottom. V'hibitu acharei Moshe. You actually read the Rashi before that. Yakumu kol ha'am omdim mipanov. They stood up before him. Ve'in yoshvim. They didn't sit ad sheniskas mehem until he was out of their eye vision, until he was covered up from them. That's the halacha I'm telling you. If the Gadol Hador walks in, you stand up as soon as you see him, and you don't sit down until he disappears. Okay, so that.
Or until he sits down.
No, until he sits down. Right, or until he sits down. Then it says, look at the next Rashi. V'hibitu acharei Moshe. They looked after Moshe l'shevach. Rashi brings down one opinion in the Medrash. This is a praise of Moshe Rabbeinu. They looked after Moshe Rabbeinu with admiration. They were thinking to themselves, Ashrei Yolud Isha, fortunate is a person born of flesh and blood, a person born from a human mother, Shekach Muvtach, that he is so assured, that the Shechina will enter the tent after him. Moshe Rabbeinu is going out to the tent, and then the Shechina, the divine presence, is going to follow him. And that's pretty good for a human being. They decide, okay, time to meet with Hashem. And he goes into the tent, and the Shechina comes in there. Okay, so the people looked after him with admiration. But there are others that say, well, this is the people looking after Moshe Rabbeinu, and they're saying, the Medrash says, look how thick his thighs are. And now, he made all of that off of us. And that's all off of us, which is a standard refrain that you hear even nowadays. Just about every rabbi in a shul in America, how much is a rabbi making? What does a rabbi do all day anyway? Everybody's always worried about the rabbi. What does a rabbi do all day? Everything got criticism of rabbi. It's very difficult to be a rabbi. A pulpit rabbi is a very demanding position. You're living in a glass house. Everybody's looking at you. And there are always going to be those people in the shul who don't like you for whatever reason. Rabbi Beryl Wine once told a great story on Rabbi Zev Leff. Rabbi Leff, do you know Rabbi Leff? So Rabbi Leff was a Rav in Miami, and I think it's somewhere else, but he was a Rav in Miami. He said there was a guy in the shul who did not like him. There was a guy in the shul he could tell does not like him. So he waited till Yom Kippur, right before Ne'ilah. Right before the last prayer on Yom Kippur, he walks over to the guy and he says, I'm sorry, have I done something is there something I've done wrong that you don't like me? He says, Rabbi, I hate your guts. He says, why? What have I done? He says, every time you speak in shul, you make me feel guilty. Every time you speak, every time you give a drush, you make me feel guilty. In which case, he didn't feel so bad. The good, that means somebody's listening. That means somebody's listening. So here, the Medrash, Rashi doesn't quote it. Rashi only quotes the positive side of the Medrash. The Medrash says, and this is where it starts from, where's the rabbi doing? How much does the rabbi get paid? I heard about a shul where the shul budget was decreasing. So the board of directors said to the rabbi, they want the rabbi to take a voluntary $1,000 a year pay cut. So the rabbi sent a message back to the board of directors. He goes, listen, first of all, I think it's unfair that you expect me, you want to save on the budget, you cut my salary. I have an idea. You want me to give up 5% of my salary. He was earning $20,000 a year at the time. You want me to give up 5% of my salary. So I have an idea. Everybody on the board of directors should take a voluntarily 5% of their earnings, these are businessmen and everything, and donate it to the shul. And I'll gladly donate the 1,000 to the shul, and you'll match me. You'll give 5% or whatever the percentages of your salaries to the shul. That was the last he heard about the issue. After that, he never got the pay cut and everything. Everybody just went on to the next issue on the what do you call it. So that's the critical view that people have of a rabbi. Now, take a look at the next pasuk. Moshe would come to the tent, the cloud of glory would come down, and Hashem would speak with Moshe. The people saw the cloud. The people would bow. Now, the next pasuk is the one I want to get to today. We're going to read in Orach Chaim, which will knock your socks off. V'diber Hashem el Moshe panim el panim. Hashem spoke to Moshe face to face. Kasher yidaber ish oreo, as a man speaks to his friend. V'shavel amachna, and then Moshe would return back. U'b'shorso Yeshua bin Nun nar lo yom yishot. His attendant Yeshua bin Nun was the lad. He never left him. So this idea of speaking to Moshe face to face. First of all, face to face is always a symbol of intimacy. In the world of mating, for example, animals do not mate face-to-face. Only human beings mate face-to-face. There are four, I think 3 animals that mate. I think snakes. I forgot, the Gemara says another animal. I forgot who it is. Other than that, in the animal kingdom, they do not mate because it's not an act of intimacy. It's an act of reproduction. By human beings, it's an act of reproduction, but it's also an act of intimacy. There's an emotional connection. So when it says that God speaks to Moshe face to face, and the whole concept of the Kodesh HaKadoshim is always metaphorically the idea of some sort of intimacy in the relationship. We even see the relationship between God and the Jewish people as the husband and the wife. So there's some sort of act of intimacy or implied intimacy over here. So God speaks to Moshe face to face is the highest level of intimacy that could be reached. So at plain meaning, it just means face to face. They're talking to each other face to face. Now, you will find that if you watch how women communicate, watch women speak to each other. Women always look at each other and make direct eye contact. They also keep their faces about 2 inches away, right? and they kind of look at each other and they lock eyes with you. They even move their heads and say, they just kind of move their heads back in sync with each other. When men talk, you could have a conversation just like this without you bothering to turn around. You're crazy. You're out of your mind. He's great. No, he isn't. He's horrible. You have a whole conversation. You're crazy. Women are always saying things like, oh, that's right. Oh, I know what you mean. Oh, 100%. Oh, that's true, right? Because women are always like, they love to hear that there's a word women use, they're validated. You ever hear them use that word? I need to be validated. I just like to be, my feelings have been validated. I don't need to be validated. I couldn't care less what you think of my feelings. This is how I feel. And the next guy who gets in my way, I'm going to club him. I don't need somebody to tell me, oh, I know what you mean. I don't care if you know what I mean or not. I'm just plain mean. Don't bother with I once had Shabbos afternoon. This is years ago. This goes back close to 30 years. I think we just moved into the neighborhood. So these kids, Shabbos afternoon, I'm trying to take a nap. Now my Shabbos afternoon nap is sacred. And these kids are bouncing a basketball right outside my window. These neighborhood kids are bouncing a basketball. We were just married, we didn't have any kids yet. These kids are bouncing a basketball outside the window. So I opened up the window. I said, hey guys, could you quit bouncing the basketball, will you? So they stop for a second, 2 minutes later, I think just as I fall asleep, they start bouncing the ball again and wake me up again. So this time I call out the window, guys, get out of here, will you? All right, so they what do you call it? So it kept on going on. Finally I got up, I was upset. I got up and I said, listen, if I can't sleep, their parents aren't sleeping. So I walked outside, I grabbed the ball, grabbed the basketball, and I marched the kid down the block. And I knocked on the door, none too. My wife was really upset with me for doing this, but I wasn't gonna, she's very non-confrontational, but I needed my Shabbos nap. So I knock on the door, and the mother answers the door. And this is a lady who I'm not particularly, we never really saw eye to eye. And she's a bit of a psychologist anyway. She was a bit of a psychologist. I knock on the door. I said, your kid is bouncing that basketball right outside my window, and I've asked him 3 times not to do it. I'm going to take that ball, I'm going to hurl it down the hill. And so the woman looks and she goes, oh, that must be very painful. And I was ready, I'm telling you, I didn't say anything, I was ready to just say, well, not as painful as this, I did not want psychology. I wanted something done about that basketball. That's all I cared about. So that idea of intimacy, whereas a man could talk to another man, they could sit side to side, back to back, it doesn't matter. Women have that connection. That's what face-to-face means. The famous story, the wife says to her husband, Harold, are you listening to me? And the guy, he's reading the newspaper. I hear every word you're saying, Edna. He goes, you're not listening with your eyes. Oh, I see. Eyes are for listening, No, you got to look and pretend to be interested. So that's the basic idea of what panim el panim, page 504, Mr. Fogel. That's what panim el panim means over here. Now, I want to read you. I want to go into a concept over here, and I want to read the words inside. There's a verse in Koheles, Ecclesiastes, Mishli or Ecclesiastes, I think it's in Koheles. It says, K'mayim haponim laponim, kain lev ha'adam la'adam, which means, as water reflects a face, so too, as water reflects a face, so too a heart reflects another heart. In the old days, they didn't have mirrors. You have mirrors. We want to take a look at yourself. So women had mirrors. You took a piece of glass, you charred it, and you gave it to a broken piece of glass until you finally got it. It wasn't like nowadays you got to buy a mirror in any hardware store. So if you had a mirror, you gave it to a wife. If you want to see a reflection of yourself, so what you did was, it's in Mishli. It's in Mishli, not in Koheles. It's in Proverbs. Proverbs 27:19. K'mayim haponim laponim, kein lev ha'adam la'adam. If you want to see a reflection of yourself, you look in the water. The water reflects your face, okay? So what Shlomo HaMelech is saying in Mishli is that the same way that water reflects a face, hearts serve as a barometer. They reflect what's going on in somebody's heart. If you feel good about me, I probably feel that you feel good about me, I probably feel good about you, without anybody saying anything. If you don't think much of me, I probably don't think much of you either, and you sense it, that's why you don't think much of me. It's only a sense. It doesn't have to be anything else. It could be a guy you see in the yeshiva all the time. He never says hello to you. You never say hello to him. He's a guy in a different program. And for some reason, you just don't like that guy. You don't know why, but you just don't like that guy. I can almost guarantee you he doesn't like you either. Because how your heart reflects. There's actually a story about a certain Rav who had to influence somebody who was really like an enemy of the Jewish people. I forgot what the story was. He had to get this guy to do something for the Jewish community. The guy was a goy who didn't like the Jews. And so the Rav went towards him, spoke to the guy, and within minutes, he had what he needed. So somebody asked him, how did you do it? So he said the entire time on the way there, all he was doing was trying to activate his heart, to get his heart to like this guy. To try to like this guy. And if he could get this guy to like this guy, in his heart, chances are the guy's going to like him. And therefore, the hearts reflect each other. Okay? That's a principle in life. It's certainly true in the home. It's true with people that you know. It's true in the office. And it's generally fail safe. If there's somebody that you don't like, chances are he does not like you. Because he senses that you don't like him. You sense that he doesn't like you. I don't know where the cycle begins. And then when people do get along with each other, there's there's actually in the Mishnah, in Pirkei Avos, where it says that David and Yonasan loved each other. And they were best of friends. And the Tiferes Yisrael is one of the commentaries. He uses a Latin word. I don't know what the Latin word is. He says there's a phenomenon known by some long Latin word where two people meet each other, they've never met each other before, and there's just an automatic click, an automatic connection. And there are other times where two people meet each other and there's no connection at all. Now, what is true is that likes attract. You will always find that guys with similar interests gravitate towards each other. The jocks gravitate towards the jocks, and the artist gravitates towards the artists, and the what do you call it? People find their niche. People find their peer group. That generally happens. Now, says the Or HaChaim like this. My wife asked me, not the Or HaChaim doesn't say this, I'm telling you. My wife once asked me a good question. Said, why don't we get report cards from Hashem? Would you like to know how you're doing? What does Hashem think of you? Would you like to know? Why? She suggested maybe on Yom Kippur, right at the end of Yom Kippur, right after they blow shofar, everybody should go up to the Aron Kodesh. There should be a report card. You know, it just kind of drops down from heaven, a report card. How you're doing? You know, Lashon Hara, B-, you know, Chesed, you got an A, learning Torah, B, what do you call it, Tzedakah, A-, what do you call it, Tefillin, A, you know, Shabbos observance, C. Oh, that's not good. You know what? Treating your wife, D+. You know, why don't you get a what do you call it? You know, get a report card. Yeah.
But that kind of thing would stop you from having free will.
Good, you're answering the question. But in general, we still would like to know. That's the answer to my wife's question. I didn't want to go into the practicalities that the Aron Kodesh doesn't have report cards in it. But the question is, you know, we'd like to know how we're doing. We would like to know how we're doing. What does Hashem think of you? Did you ever wonder that? What does Hashem think of me? So let me read you the words of the Or HaChaim. The Or HaChaim says, here we are, we're in Lamed 33:11. V'dibra Hashem al Moshe panim al panim. I'm going to translate it in English and read it through. What this means is that to the degree that a person prepares himself, the degree that Moshe would prepare himself to receive the divine presence, to that degree, the divine presence would reflect upon him. Because to the degree that a person, any person, prepares himself for the hashpa'as hakedusha, for the divine energy, that's what you'll achieve. Like anything else in life, to the degree that you prepare is at the degree that you will achieve. The Omro, and he says, I just want to dedicate the shir. My father-in-law was nifter yesterday, so I just want to dedicate the shir to Yonah ben Naftali Hertz in Columbus. My wife just left last night. We got her onto the plane. She went back. So I just want to dedicate the shir to him. So he says like this: Kasher yadaber ishel re'ehu, as a man talks to his friend. And therefore, what it means is, and how he quotes the pasuk that we were mentioning before, Kamayim haponim leponim, that when Hashem speaks to Moshe face to face, that is a manifestation of that pasuk, that Hashem speaks Kamayim haponim leponim, meaning that hearts can sense that which is hidden. Isn't that a remarkable thing, how hearts can sense certain things? You'll see that when you get married, your wife will ask you, she'll take one look at you and she'll say, what's wrong? It could be she's reading your face. It could be she's reading your face a little bit also. But in general, she could sense that. She could sense it. She could sense it even if you're in the other room. She could sense it. You're in one room, and you'll be able to sense it too. There are times when you come home, and you don't even see your wife. She's in the back room doing the laundry or something, and you open the front door, and you know, I'm in trouble. I don't know why, but I'm in trouble. You could sense it. It's in the air. It's thick. And so he says over here, hearts can sense that which was hidden, whether to love or to hate. Because to the degree that a person loves his friend, to that degree the friend's heart will sense it and will love him. It's an unbelievable phenomenon. Now, pay attention carefully. Here's the upshot of it all. And this is why it says, as a man speaks to his friend. Because a person based on this could test where he stands with his Creator. If your heart desires Hashem and to serve Him, that's a sign that Hashem loves you. And then mercifully, the Or HaChaim does not say the flip side. All he says is, if you desire Hashem and desire to serve Hashem, that's an indication of what Hashem thinks of you. Right? Yeah. So, and mercifully, he doesn't say the flip side, which is, and if you don't desire to serve Hashem, and you don't think much of doing Torah and mitzvahs, well, then then it ain't so good on the other side either. Now, again, we have to be very, very careful here. The fundamental truth of Judaism is God does not have any emotion. God created emotion. God created it. God does not have good days and bad days. God does not love or hate. When we speak about God is merciful or God is in midas hadin, which is strict justice, that means the way we would describe what Hashem is doing. That's the term we would give it. God is being merciful. God is being din. But God is permanent and unchanging. God has no emotional change whatsoever. If it says God's angry at the Jewish people, that just means that based on what's happening, the way we would describe it in human terms, which is the only term that we could possibly use, the only way we describe it in human terms is God is merciful. And by the way, a blind man can't see the sun. A bat can't see the sun. Doesn't mean the sun's not there. Doesn't mean the sun's not there. Doesn't mean the sun's not shining brightly. It just means that this person is totally and utterly incapable. Can you imagine a blind man saying, I don't believe in the sun. I don't believe there's a sun.
But he can experience the sun's heat.
Let's say he's inside a room. Let's say he's what do you call? Let's say he's one of these people has an unchanging body temperature. I don't know if there's such thing. It's only an analogy. But the fact,
But no, you're right. You don't even have to say inside, because a man who's standing outside, who's been blind his whole life, he can still say there is no sun, and this warmth he gets.
there's warmth and heat. Again, it's only an analogy. There are a million and one examples. You can tell a blind man, I don't believe there's anything called color. Everything is black. I don't believe there are colors. Well, you're wrong. No, I don't believe it. The answer is that a person, and this is what frustrates philosophers and frustrated scientists and physicists. I had an uncle, my uncle the physicist was an atheist. So brilliant guy, but he was an atheist. And in his world, if you can't touch it and prove it mathematically, it doesn't exist, and it's ridiculous to think about it. Right? So that's your opinion. How do you know that's true? Maybe you can't touch gravity either. Yeah, but you can prove it. Okay, so it depends how you define proof, and it depends so on and so on. The old philosophical argument. By us, we understand we're created with a limitation. We are created with a limitation. I do not understand art. And no matter how much you would explain it to me, I would not understand art. I would probably understand little parts of art. I probably cannot. I do not understand symphonic classical music. And you could try to explain it to me. There are certain people who do understand. They understand it at a very high level. I also did not understand analytical geometry, which I took for 2 weeks in high school. I gave it right back. So the idea of that, well, if I don't understand it, it can't be. Isn't that ridiculous? Isn't that ridiculous? I mean, there's so many things in life. You take a child has obviously got limited capacity for understanding. So if a 4-year-old doesn't understand how a jet engine works, that means the jet engine doesn't work. It means that the 4-year-old, by definition, can't understand it. You've got a limit in your intelligence. A human being has a limited intelligence. God created us with intelligence that can reach this far and no more. Therefore, anything beyond our experience, we can't even, we're frustrated by it. So if you say, well, God has no emotions, how can anything have no emotions? Because we have emotions. And that's our emotions at play. Our emotions are like, it's got to have emotion. Yeah, that's a very emotional response, right? And God doesn't have emotions, right? So the Torah is telling you that the way a person relates to God, how are you doing? You're doing exactly how you feel. If you feel you're doing well and you feel the connection, that means you're doing well. And if you feel distant, then you're distant. Obviously, there are other factors involved over here. Sometimes God purposely may. It says by Avram Avinu, when Avram goes to sacrifice Yitzchak, it says, the Torah says, "Vayar es hamakom meirachok." He saw the place from a distance. So one of the commentaries points out the makom always refers to as a double meaning over there. The makom is the place, and the makom is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's what you say to a mourner. HaMakom yinamchem eschem, right? Hashem should come for you. We use the expression HaMakom. So when it says by Avram Avinu, Vayar es HaMakom meirachok, Hashem distanced himself from Avram Avinu. He wanted to put him in a state of test where if there's a strong connection between Avram and HaKadosh Baruch Hu decreased the connection to force Avram into the state of test. That's what the commentaries say. So there are times where HaKadosh Baruch Hu will decrease the connection, because you've earned the privilege to get even further by putting in a little work on your own. But in general, if a person feels blah, that means that you're in a state of blah vis-a-vis your creator. That's where a person is enthusiastic. He goes to shul enthusiastic. He likes doing mitzvahs. He likes giving tzedakah. He likes learning Torah. He likes being good to other people. And you're doing it energetically. Chances are that you're scoring points. At that point, you're getting high grades. That's what the Orach Chaim says. Okay. Now let's go on. And then we have on pasuk on bottom page 504. Moshe Rabbeinu says to Hashem, "I want to see you." And Moshe says to Hashem in pasuk 13 on page 504, "Ve'ata," and now it's 6 lines from the top, last word on the line. Moshe Rabbeinu says to Hashem, "Ve'ata." If I find favor in your eyes, hodieni na es derachecha, let me know your ways, veidacha, and I will know you, leman emtzachein beinecha, in order that I find favor in your eyes. Please Hashem, I want to see you. I want to see the ultimate essence of you. Last word on the page. Vayomar hareini na es kivadecha, show me your glory. Show me your glory. Show me your essence. So Hashem says to Moshe Rabbeinu, skip down to pasuk Chaf, 3 lines from the top. Vayomer lo suchal leros es panai, you will not be able to see my face, literally my front. Ki lo yirani ha'adam v'chai. No man can see me and live. We'll see what that means in a second. Vayomer Hashem hinei makom iti v'nitzavta al atzur. There's a place here and you'll perch yourself on the rock. As I pass my glory by, I will put you in the crevice of the rock. I will put my hand over you till I pass. I will remove my hand. You'll see my back. You will not see my front. What does that mean? Let me see you. You can't see me. No man can see me and live. And what do you call it? And you can see my front. You won't see my back. What's going on here? Again, he wants to.
There's no emunah or what? I don't get it.
No. He wants to understand the truth. He wants to understand the truth to the depth that you could possibly understand the truth. Okay, there's always a concept that we like to know. Whatever you understand, that's the infinite truth of Torah and the infinite truth of mitzvahs. Whatever we understand, I'd like to understand it deeper. If you ever understood something, I'd like to really understand deeper. And the more we understand something, the greater, the more pleasure we experience. So, Rav Dessler has the following analogy. I want you to think for a moment. There's an exercise that dates back to Rav Dessler back in 1960, 1950, 1960. Something Rav Dessler was trying to do to make people understand the spiritual pleasures. I want you to think for a moment of all the pleasure that you've had in the last 24 hours. Okay? I want you to think of all the pleasure that you've had, the food that you've eaten, good music that you've heard, people that you've seen, people that you haven't seen, which is often a greater pleasure. All the pleasure that you've had in the last 24 hours. Okay, now take all that pleasure and roll that pleasure into one big ball of pleasure. And imagine the effect that would have on you if you experienced all that pleasure all at once. Okay? Now, I want you to take all the pleasure everybody else in the room has had in the last 24 hours and put that into your ball and feel that explosion of pleasure. Okay? Now, I want you to think of all the pleasure. The way the exercise works, I'm going to speed it up. The way the exercise works is think of all the pleasure you've had in your lifetime, all the pleasure all these people have had in a lifetime, all the pleasure all human beings have had since the beginning of time, and roll that into one giant ball of pleasure and experience that moment of pleasure. Could you imagine what would happen to you? You know what your face would look like? You would explode from pleasure, right? Now, all of that pleasure, that explosive pleasure, is not equal one moment of pleasure in the world to come. All the pleasure all human beings have ever had, it doesn't equal one moment of pleasure in the eternal world over the world to come. Then Rav Dessler has an exercise to explain eternity. one of his exercises, imagine how many grains of sand there are in a heap in a mountain. And there's a bird, imagine how long 100 years is. Think about what happened last year, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. Imagine what 100 years, imagine a bird flies by every 100 years and takes 1 grain of sand. And then the next 100 years, it takes, how long it would take him to deplete the sand on the mountain?
What year did you write this out?
This is in the 1950s, 1960s, Rav Dessler.
Okay,
So he's what he calls, he says, imagine the bird coming, he says, and that's not eternity. However long that takes, that's still less than eternity. There's only 2 eternities. There's the eternity of the world to come, and there's the eternity of waiting in line in bank. Right? Those are the only 2 eternities known to man, because everybody in the bank says, I've been waiting here in eternity, so that's, I guess that's where the eternity is. So that's his exercise. The point is like this. What is the world to come? What is the world to come? The world to come is an exposure to the truth of God. What's an exposure to the truth of God? So, Scott, did you ever go to a mystery movie where you had no idea what was happening till the last scene?
Yeah, but that's because I don't pay attention to plot.
Okay, well, I do pay attention to plot and still can't get it, right? And it's always on that last scene or the last page of a book where all of a sudden you start going, oh, you mean, he was a bad guy. Oh, she got killed. Oh, she tried killing. Oh, so why? Oh, you mean, and all of a sudden the plot the whole thing starts to fall together. It's like Harry Potter, right? The whole thing, all of a sudden on the last chapter, you get to Snape's memory, and all of a sudden everything starts to, that is the pleasure. And also it's like, I remember when I read Harry Potter, I was clueless. I mean, I hate to admit that. I shouldn't admit this on camera, but it was too deep for me. But but certainly when you get certain things like, what is going on over here? And then you go, and there's that burst of it. I was always the guy in the parking lot after a movie. You remember there was always a guy in the parking lot at the end of the movie, there's one guy explaining it to the other guy. One guy standing there leaning against the car just going, oh, you mean he was a good guy? That was always me. I had my friend was always out there giving me a shear in the parking lot. Okay. Because my friend could hop it right from the beginning. Now, if that's true of things in our little world over here, imagine what goes on in the world of truth. And there are a lot of things we're wondering about. Why did you have to meet me? Why did I have to meet you? Why did I have to be born Ashkenazi and other people are born Sephardi? That was for my parents' benefit. Why? You notice him shaking his head on the way out. Why does everybody? Why did this happen to me? Why did I make money? Why did I lose money? Why did I trade? Why? And all of a sudden you get to the world of truth and kaboom! You mean, and it's all explained to you. That burst of pleasure a human being can't contain. Lo yirani adam chai. It's too powerful a burst. The physical body cannot contain it. The same way the physical body cannot contain certain physical pleasures. If you overload the body on heroin, body cannot contain it. The same way the physical body cannot contain the spiritual pleasure. We cannot, our neshama would burst out. There's a source that says tzaddikim, when they die, their neshama simply leaves their body like metal going to a magnet. The neshama just wants to get to it. And it would just burst right out of the body when it's exposed to that level of pleasure and that level of truth. Therefore Hashem says, Lo yirani ha'adam v'chai. So then the commentators explain like this. You can't see my face, but you can see my back. So there are different explanations for what that means. The one that sits best with me, the explanation that sits best with me, doesn't mean that it's the best explanation. It's the one that sits best with me is that as events take place, and we're seeing them from in front, we don't necessarily understand them. But when you look back on the event, suddenly you see, there seems to have been some sort of plan here. So I'm only using this as an example, and I'm not saying that it's cause and effect. I'm just saying that it's an interesting coincidence. You take a look, there's a Holocaust. And there's a person in the world who is wondering, why is this happening? Right? Now, the question, by the way, is a silly question. The question is a silly question. Because if suffering is unfair, then when a person stubs his toe and doesn't know the reason, they should also ask, why is this happening? It's just that happens to be on a bigger scale. But if it's unfair, it's unfair. A falsehood is a falsehood, even if it's that false. It's either true or it's false. So if it's not right to stub your toe either. The only reason is this is much more dramatic. The Holocaust is much more dramatic on a grander scale and a much bigger tragedy. But if suffering that we don't understand bothers us, we should also be bothered when we stub our toe. Because I don't understand why I stubbed my toe. So as events unfold, like, why is this happening? Then with hindsight, you look back and you say, whoa, it's interesting. You had a Holocaust, and that caused Jews to come to Israel, and now we have people in Israel because the world felt guilty, so they gave us and interesting that this may have been, again, I'm only speculating with my own personal, has nothing to do with anything I've seen in a source. Just from a personal perspective, it is interesting that did force an ingathering in Eretz Yisrael, which we never had before, and the Torah talks about an ingathering of the exiles. The Jews have come from America, from Persia, from Russia, from France, from Yemen. Even now, what's going on in France? Even now, what's going on in France right now? Yeah, obviously, we don't want anybody to suffer. We don't want tragedies. But it is interesting that as a result of all that anti-Semitism, French Aliyah is the biggest Aliyah in the world now. The French are coming to Israel in droves. And I did that. I'm not a prophet. I don't know if that's why God does it. I didn't know you need a prophet for that. But what's interesting is that as you look at things with hindsight, even in your personal life, there's sometimes like, boy, I don't know why this is happening. And then you look back and say, oh boy, am I glad I didn't do that. I just read here this shul, this rabbi, there's a great book that you should read called Tales Out of Shul by Rabbi Emanuel Feldman, which is the story of how he built up the community in Atlanta, Georgia. So he came to Atlanta. There were 10 members in the shul, 10 shul. Atlanta's got a booming Jewish community now, very, very booming Jewish community with schools and mikvahs and everything, just the whole thing. It started from nothing in the 50s. And so he says, at a certain point, like 5 years into his rabbinate, the shul collected $10,000 and bought a piece of land that they were going to build a new shul on because the community was growing. Okay. They hired an architectural company. The architectural company said that the bedrock soil has gotten soaked from some sort of riverbed or something. You can't build on it. And they couldn't afford to go to court, and the guy said it wasn't his fault. So they lost the $10,000, and they're all upset. The whole shul was upset. A few years later, they bought a different property, checked it out more carefully, bought a different property, and then it turned out that the original property, which at the time looked like a disaster that they lost that money, the original property wouldn't have worked out. It was built the whole neighborhood changed, and the shul would have been a disaster for the shul, and the new property was much better. So sometimes in life you look bad, something negative happens. I don't really see any good in it. I know it's for my good. I don't really see the good. And the irony is, I don't even know right now it's for the good because I don't know how the end of the story works. But from a limited human vantage point, I can at least get an inkling of I see this could be good. I see that there is some sort of benefit here. That's what the Torah is teaching you. That's what it means. You can't see my front. That's one of the most difficult questions that we grapple with. Why? Everybody asks why. I don't know why. We'll have to see. I don't know. We have to wait to see how this plays out. And sometimes in life you see how things play out for different people, how things play out. And some guy didn't get accepted to one school that he really wanted to go to, and he's broken, and eventually he gets accepted to a better school, which gives him a better job, and so on and so forth. You get this all over life. Some guy wants to marry a certain girl because her father's got a lot of money, and then he doesn't end up, she rejects him, and then it turns out her father loses all the money, and she's not that good looking anyway. The whole thing, then he marries a girl who doesn't have much money, and then her father ends up getting all the money from the original guy, so, and everybody lives happily ever after. So we don't know. That's what it means. My front you can see, but not in my back you're not able to see. Okay, gentlemen. All right, we'll continue tomorrow.